Tinton Falls, NJ. The new mayor here looked gleefully down at the 6-month-old girl, the daughter of a councilman, but opted against the traditional political peck on the baby's cheek. It was the germs, he said. Of course, there is not much that is traditional about this first-term mayor, Vito Perillo. He is a 93-year-old World War II veteran who had never held elected office. His campaign consisted largely of knocking on every door in town, accompanied by his campaign manager, and wearing out 2 pairs of shoes in the process. And he defeated a 2-term incumbent who had been involved in the borough's government for nearly 2 decades. His surprise victory last fall gave him a national profile. Even Lester Holt of NBC came for an interview. Tinton Falls, a quaint town of roughly 18,000 people 5 miles inland from the Jersey Shore, was quickly in the spotlight, and it had its new mayor to thank. But now, after several weeks in office, he is running into the kind of traditional problem that plagues mayors across the country, a disagreeable borough council. There's been a lot of pushback, but things are getting better now, Mr. Perillo said. He had expected to be able to appoint his choice for borough administrator and borough attorney quickly, but the council was not moving as fast as he hoped. It took more than a month, but he finally has his administrator, Michael Scudera, though he is still waiting for the borough attorney to be approved. He calls his experience with the council a bothersome thing, but chalks some of it up to a political miscalculation. When I ran for mayor, there were 2 people who ran for council unopposed, and that was a big mistake, he said. I mean, I should have had 2 people run with me. At least I would have had 2 people on the council that I could count on. Tinton Falls has a nonpartisan government, so the council does not caucus as political parties or proclaim allegiance to Republicans or Democrats. Mr. Perillo is a registered Republican, though he said that was because of a single vote long ago, adding that he has always been an independent. The battle with the council has quickly enveloped the entire town. Mr. Perillo's supporters have launched a Facebook group to back him, while his campaign Facebook has also been pushing his arguments. Soon, hundreds of people were flooding the normally staid council sessions, loudly cheering on their new mayor. It elicited a rare emotion from Mr. Perillo. Surprise. I don't know what was going on, he said. The public was doing more than I was. There were people who thought I wasn't being treated fairly. Some council members have described their early dealings with Mr. Perillo as challenging, attributing it to the mayor's inexperience. He is very new at politics, and the things that go on in the internal side of it, said Christopher Pack, a councilman. But he's working hard toward making it work. If there is a starting point for Mr. Perillo's decades-long, relatively unplanned drift into politics, it might be sometime in the last year, when he finally reached a breaking point with his property tax bill, and grew increasingly angry at what he viewed was opaque spending by the town's administration. A whistleblower lawsuit involving the police department that cost his town $1.1 million further motivated him. I wanted to find out what was going on actually, he said. That kind of ticked me off a little bit. So he made up his mind to run. Or, more precisely, walk. I asked a previous mayor, I says, Mayor so-and-so, how'd you get elected? What was your secret? Explained Mr. Perillo. Vito, he says, you gotta walk. In a stroke of luck in a campaign marked by good fortune, Mr. Perillo's campaign manager, Steve Leach, was a former postal worker. Perhaps no one was better suited to canvass the 15-square-mile borough. We didn't really see the point of mailing a flyer out if we could walk them to people's doors, said Mr. Leach, 60, who has also been Mr. Perillo's next-door neighbor since 1992. So the two men with no political experience, Mr. Leach says, did technically serve as campaign manager for a student council president in high school. I'm 2 for 2 now, set out for a months-long walkabout. Sometimes they just left flyers, while other times visits led to extended conversations. Mr. Perillo was always proud to end an encounter with a handshake, a grip that even after 93 years, 38 of them as an electrical engineer for the Department of Defense, plus a tour in the South Pacific during World War II, can still crack a knuckle. His vigor, he says, comes from keeping his body in motion. He tries to play golf at least 2 times a week, though he laments that he uses a golf cart now, and considers himself a consistent player. Sometimes I wish I could hit it like him, said his grandson, Mike Perillo Gentile. Mr. Perillo also belongs to the local YMCA, regularly completing a demanding circuit of about 10 to 12 machines. I think that's why I'm here today, is because I keep active, he said. His campaign was a sparse operation. Aside from Mr. Leach, he relied on his family, especially Mr. Perillo Gentile, who managed a lot of the online efforts and helped book his interviews. The two men are close. Mr. Perillo was the best man at his grandson's wedding last October. Though he passed on the bachelor party, he gave a stand-up comedy shtick toast that Mr. Perillo said had the crowd shouting his name. There's more pictures of him on the dance floor than of me and my wife, Mr. Perillo Gentile said. A month after the wedding, it was time to get to work running the town. Except no one had an instruction manual. I think when he won it was kind of like, oh, this is really cool, but then the next day it was, oh, what do you do? We don't really know how to do anything, Mr. Perillo Gentile said. So Mr. Perillo helped form an advisory team and laid out his plans. The newly minted mayor, who earned an MBA from Fairleigh Dickinson University, was eager to delve into the town's $24 million budget for the first year. Hopefully, I don't want to see any increase in the budget, he said. No increases. I want to hold the line on the budget, and I hope I can do that. He acknowledged that he has some tough negotiations to tackle that may affect the town's bottom line, including a new contract for the police department. But he has surprised people before, starting with the fact that he is in this position in the first place. If I didn't think I could win, I wouldn't have run, Mr. Perillo said, before adding, but that's not completely true. I would have run anyway.